Hi, everyone. So I wanted to take you through some logistics related to getting ramped up for final projects because we have two main components that are due for final projects. And the first one, which is essentially a project proposal, and we call it the Methods Outline and Study Area Map. That's going to be due on April 10th. So keep an eye out for that deadline in Moodle because it has a tendency to come up fast. So if you haven't yet looked through the list of options for final projects, those are posted on Moodle. Earlier is always a good time to go through those. As a new thing, I announced this in the forum in terms of logistics for this semester because of the online form of this class. We are going to limit the numbers of final projects to ones that basically that I've got much better familiarity with. That's going to help me get you guys through the projects and hopefully also be able to put together some online tutorials to show you some tips and tricks to get through those ones. If you are doing an honors thesis, a graduate thesis, or just have really strong interest in something that is not on that list, email me. I am flexible in terms of options of what you want to pick. In normal scenarios, everything would be wide open, but this is just narrowing it down is gonna help me help you. So take a look through that list of available options on Moodle, download some stuff. All of those have zip files associated with them. And the zip files all contain README text files, which you can open in Notepad, WordPad, Word, whatever text reader you want to look through. And those README files have kind of varying levels of suggestions of how to approach the project. They might just have a question associated with them, or they might be more detailed in terms of, actually laying out a couple of steps to get you started. So look through those, because when you submit the project proposal, this methods outline and study area map on April 10th, you should have at that point a pretty good idea of the direction that you want to go for a final project. And the idea, again, is you submit this project proposal. It does not have to be super detailed in terms of exactly what you're doing. It just has to be kind of a general outline of here's the direction that I want to go, because then what we do, myself and the graduate TAs, is we read through all of those and then we try to give you comments of, okay, you want to do this, here are some tools that you might want to look at in GIS in order to do that. All right, so what does this methods outline actually entail? So again, this is, let's see, due, I have this as due next Friday, but this is Friday, April 10th is the deadline for this. So the project proposal, this methods outline and study area map, should have 4 pieces to it. The first is an abstract. So you guys should be pretty familiar with what an abstract looks like at this point. The second should be a table, and this doesn't have to be exhaustive, but at least a few lines of where your data are coming from. Number 3 is a little bit of methods. So what types of tools do you expect to be using? You should, at this point, actually lots of tools. So if you expect to be using, some sort of raster analysis, then you might want to say, I'm likely to be using raster calculator or reclassifying things or creating a Euclidean distance. If you're likely to be using vector data, you may be doing some of those geoprocessing tools like creating buffers or clipping or erasing. So if you know how to do the steps, then put them down. And if you don't know how to do the steps, then describe them as best you can, and we'll see if we can help you find those tools. And then step number 4 is a map of your study area. And again, that can be pretty simple, but the idea is that if you invest a little time making your study area map nice and professional looking now, that's going to go on your final poster at the end. So you're saving yourself some later effort by putting in the effort now. All right, so what does an abstract look like? So generally, here are some questions that you can address in an abstract. So why is this project important? You know, like why should your audience care about this? Do you have a specific question or a hypothesis that you're trying to answer? If you're posing it as a hypothesis, then, you know, what's your general expectation of what you're likely to find as you answer this question? So, you know, generally this is for a broader audience, not just for me, because ultimately you're going to be presenting these posters in an online forum, but, you know, could be to people who are not familiar with this topic. And so you want to keep it pretty general. You know, why is a stranger walking up to your poster or walking up to your online poster? Why should they care about your topic? The next piece is a table of source data. So this could take a form of an actual table, right, where you've got some, you know, name of the layer, or, you know, whether that's a shapefile or whether it's a raster grid, and then some description of, you know, what that layer is likely to be. It may be that you only have one spatial data layer that you're working with. That's okay, but, you know, give it a little thought. Many of the project suggested final projects are from Massachusetts, so you know, have data from Massachusetts. So you should definitely be able to find other data layers to compare those data to on MassGIS. And if you're outside of the state of Massachusetts, you know, scope around a little bit and see if other states have the spatial data that that you need. Step number 3 is an outline of the different steps that you're likely to take. So this is just an example of one outline that from a past student that was nicely done. You know, basically just had some examples of, you know, here's what I want to digitize and here's how I'm going to create, you know, these areas that I'm looking for. You know, this doesn't have to be 50 steps long. You know, a few steps is totally fine. And in this case, your audience is me and the grad TAs. So what you want to make sure to do is, if you know the name of a tool, stick that tool in there. If you don't know the name of the tool, write a couple of question marks to us so that we can help you get there. Here's just another example of method steps from another proposal. So pretty simple, you know, just, you know, general things that we're going to do. Last piece is the map of the study area. So study area map, and here are a couple of different examples. You want to be thinking about, okay, if somebody comes up to your online poster at the end of the semester, can they pretty quickly orient themselves in terms of where in the world we are by looking at your study area map, right? So if I saw the study area map on the left, you know, it's pretty clear, and you've got lots of people from Massachusetts on your side, so, you know, most people are pretty familiar with the way that Massachusetts looks, at least those of us who live in Massachusetts. So I'm going to assume that this poster on the left, the study area map, is focused on something going on in the towns of Massachusetts, right? Because that's kind of highlighted in this poster. And then on the one on the right, you know, definitely some coastal study in part of the Cape, right? So those are just generally getting us oriented in the world as to where we are. It does not, so the study area map does not have to have your data on it necessarily. It can, but it doesn't have to. It can just be, you know, real simple, like, you know, I'm doing a study, something in, you know, the town of Amherst, and so I'm going to put the state of Massachusetts and then, you know, highlight the town of Amherst, or draw a circle around the town of Amherst or something like that, just to indicate this is where we are geographically. Here's another example of a study area map. This is actually from a paper that was doing something about alternative energy in Colorado. And so the study area map is actually, you know, in 2 components here, but the real study area map, to give us a sense of where this is that tiny thing in the lower left, you know, here, which is basically just like, okay, Colorado, that's what this weird rectangle is that you're looking at. It's not just a, you know, arbitrary rectangle in space kind of thing. Here's another example of one, also from a paper where they were doing coastal marine surveys. And this one, they have a couple of additional pieces of information in there. One is sea surface temperature, and the other, all of these little dots, right? So all of the dots going kind of like up the coastline. Those are the areas of the actual studies that were done. So this was an example where in the study area map, not only do they say, okay, the Atlantic coast of Europe, but also, we've got some additional information in here to give a sense of what the study is about and, where the actual samples were collected. And here's one last example of a study area map, also from a paper. And this one was basically, we're talking about the Cape Mountain zebra. And, here's kind of a blob generally of where in the world it used to be. And then presumably these spots on the map are, areas that are going to be relevant later on as you read the paper or go further in the poster. So for your study area map, be thinking fairly simply. Really, the question you want to answer is to help somebody looking at your poster orient themselves geographically in space. What is it that we're talking about? Where in the world are we doing this analysis? So to help you out in terms of those, in terms of your table of data sources, there is a link in Moodle to spatial data sources. This is a working Google Sheet, so you can add to it or update links if they're not working. But this is, what we've been working on for a few years in terms of putting together, some decent sources of finding different spatial data sets online. And then the last piece is just that reminder that there's a link in Moodle to these existing project ideas and the data. So project idea over here, some description of them, and then the link over here. These are to permanent archive in Box. So all of you should have access to that through your UMass accounts, and you can just go ahead and download those zip files. I promise that none of them have viruses in them, and open them up and see what's inside. See if you can open, if there are spatial data inside, see if you can open those in GIS. Last thing I just wanted to point out is this number 1 on here, this contribute to OpenStreetMap, is an option for if you are having a really hard time either installing ArcMap or accessing ArcMap through the Amazon Web Services. This is an option for you where you can complete a final project without using the Arc products. I would generally, just from like a learning perspective, encourage you guys to try to use ArcGIS for your final projects, to not pick this one if possible, just because you'll gain more skills in GIS by practicing in GIS. But I also fully understand that there's a lot going on right now. So if you want to go that route, this is basically doing some online digitizing for humanitarian OpenStreetMap. And you can kind of log your hours in there and show us what you did on a final poster with only online stuff. Okay, so that's it in terms of logistics towards the methods outline and study area map, and I will see you in the next one.